Hello, my name is Stephen Understein, and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. Thank you for joining me for the last installment of the third chapter of Emmet Fox's Sermon on the Mount. The chapter is titled, As a Man Thinketh. And this section is actually the shortest one in this chapter, but this one, it just encompasses the rest of it and encompasses so much of the stuff we actually have talked about on this podcast. In general, let alone with this chapter, let alone with Sermon on the Mount. So it's only probably in total a little over 1 page long with the reading, but it's packed with some really important truths. So I'm looking forward to getting into it. So go ahead and like, subscribe, share. I appreciate all the support that we've been getting on this channel. On all of our platforms, whether it's TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X, and obviously YouTube as well. So thank you all for the support. It does mean a lot. I'm glad this message is getting out there. So thank you for that. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and read. I'm going to read out of this copy. This is the 1938 copy, like I always say, because I think it's important to read what as close to the original as possible, just due to some of the not misprints, but editing that can happen along the way. You know, this book's just under 100 years old, 90 years old right now. So people have changed a couple of things, but I enjoy the original. So here we go. This is Emmet Fox's Sermon on the Mount, chapter 3, As a Man Thinketh. And this is the last section. And the Bible verses we will be starting it with are from Matthew 5, and they're Matthew 5, 27 and 28. So here we go. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, that whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her hath committed adultery with her already in his heart. Matthew 5. In this unforgettable paragraph, Jesus stresses the master truth, so utterly fundamental yet so unsuspected by the world at large, that what really matters is thought. People have always been accustomed to suppose that as long as their deeds conformed to the law, that they have done all that they can be reasonably expected of them, and that their thoughts and feelings are of little importance, and that in any case, these are their own business exclusively. But we know now that any outward act is but the sequel to a thought, and that the type of thought which we allow to become habitual will sooner or later find expression on the plane of action. We understand now, in the light of scientific Christianity, that thoughts literally are things, and that our choice of conduct really lies in our choice of the kind of thought that we permit to occupy the stage of our mind. In other words, we have discovered that a wrong thought is just as destructive as an act as a wrong deed. The logical consequence of this undeniable fact is very startling. It means that if you entertain covetous thoughts for your neighbor's money, you are a thief at heart, even though you may not yet have put your hand in the till. And if you continue to entertain such thoughts, it is only a question of time before you will rob him. If you willingly nourish hatred, you are a murderer at heart, even though your hands have not moved to kill. The adulterer at heart is corrupting his soul, even though his impure thought is never expressed on the physical plane. Lust, jealousy, vengeance, mentally entertained, carry the soul's consent. And this soul consent is the malice of sin, whether the corresponding outer acts be yet materialized or not. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. There we go. There we go. This is a very talked about sentence or a set of verses. Actually, this is something that has been brought up in a lot of circles. And what does it actually mean? And how do we go about it? And how do we apply it? And what does it mean for us? And these two verses and Emmet Fox's exploration of these two verses really explains why what we think is so important. And I tend to agree with him. Actually, I really appreciate his analysis of this and how he wraps it up quite succinctly and directly on this section to why it applies to everyone in every way. And so I really enjoyed digging into this section of the chapter, this last piece. And so let's go ahead and get into it. And just the opening pieces here. And also, I'm going to reference back to this one occasionally. So you'll see me pick it up. This is the one I do all my highlighting. This one's pretty much all highlighted, just so you know. This one page one, because it's all so good. So this first paragraph after the Bible verses, he says Jesus stresses the master truth, so utterly fundamental yet so unsuspected by the world at large that what really matters is thought. That's kind of substantial right there. I mean, it's really giving us a whole summary of the third chapter, and it's giving us a whole summary of what I primarily talk about on this podcast is why what we think actually is incredibly important to slow down and recognize and see what's running through there, right? So this is that statement in and of itself is just a summary of so many things. But one thing to point out is in this, if you're not following along with your own copy of this, the two words master truth both begin with a capital letter. And he does this, I think I've pointed it out occasionally beforehand as we've gone through it, but he does this to emphasize the fact that these are of God, that this is a godly truth, a universal truth. This is a spiritual truth. And not only is it a spiritual truth, it is the master truth. This is something that applies and is something to be heeded above all else. And to be fair, I believe that, right? Because all sin comes from here. All bad behavior comes from what we're going to talk about here. This is the master truth. What really matters is thought. And I love how he even points out the fact that it's so utterly fundamental, meaning like it's just obvious when we actually stop and we think about and we talk about it, right? It's an obvious thing that occurs. But even though it's so utterly fundamental, it's unsuspected by the world at large. Most people don't even consider this, right? We look at the external stuff we're doing and we say, hey, that's good enough. I don't need to worry about this, because this on the outside isn't breaking any laws of the land, right? So we must be doing fine. Well, it turns out that's not true. What we hold in our heart matters. What really matters is our thinking, right? These two things come into play here when we're talking about being right with the God of our understanding, when we talk about being right with the world and the universe and all these things, right? What we carry within us, the thoughts we think, matter. They absolutely matter. But most of the world likes to just take, at least as unsuspecting, so it's not necessarily even ignored. It's just not even realized that this is where we have to go and what we have to change. I guess I didn't. I didn't until I got into recovery and I started having my own spiritual journey and having this spiritual walk of things, because I just thought the only thing that mattered was what I did. And when in reality, the things that kept me caged, the things that kept me beaten down, the things that kept me miserable was the things I was thinking about, was the way I was perceiving the world. It was my ideas and my thoughts and my perspectives. It was not the world itself. So, but you couldn't have told me that at the time. I thought if I checked all the boxes with the actions on the outside, then eventually the world was just going to go the way I wanted the world to go, and then everything was going to be fine. But turns out that's not the way things go. So it's such a crucial point. It's such a fundamental thing, but still, we don't do it. People don't engage with it. People don't actually address it because they don't want to. It's a lot of work to change the way you think. It's a lot of work to take a new perspective. And it's a humbling experience as well, because if you don't, when you do that, you not only have to change your current experience and your future interactions because of that new perspective, you have to go back and reframe everything where that perspective had come into contact or what that perspective had been relevant with. So this first one, Jesus stresses the master truth, so utterly fundamental, yet so unsuspected by the world at large, that what really matters is thought. Now, the next quote, as long as, and he's in this quote, just to give it some frame, he's talking again about just how most people are, what I was just talking about, right? That as long as we conform to the laws of the land, we're fine. And he goes right into it here. As long as their deeds conformed to the law, then they have done all that they can be responsible. Then they have done all that can be responsibly expected of them, and that their thoughts and feelings are of little importance, and that in any case, these are their own business exclusively. So it's not only that we think, and it's not only that we believe that as long as we don't break laws, we're doing the right thing, which in a sense is true, but we have to go further. But the commonly held belief, again, which was mine, that it's not even your business what I think about it. It's not even your business how I feel about it. You can't hold me accountable for how I think or how I feel about it. You can only hold me accountable for the final result, the end actions that occur, right? So if that's the case, it's whatever's going on in here and in here is my business exclusively and only. So I get to hide my stubbornness behind my conformity to the law. I get to hide my willfulness and my sin that I hold inside of me behind my good external behavior or my conformity to social norms, right? I hide there. I hide my selfish and self-absorbed and self-centered thinking and my sinful nature, my behavior that would strive away from God. This is a common place for people to hide, actually, right? To hide their true intentions. This is a common mentality that people hold. And to be fair, many people don't want to go past that. Many people don't even, I'd say many people don't know they should go past the restricting action, because that's what it is. You're just restricting the actions you actually desire to take when you're holding it in your mind and your heart, right? So you're restricting that. And they believe that's all they're responsible for. There are some people that know they should change the way they think about things, but they just enjoy it too much. Those are the ones that love their character defects still, is what they'd say in 12-step rooms. And I was one of those. I've been one of those. I probably still am one of those to some extent. If you ask me about the right character defect on the right day, I'd probably have a hard time letting something go and doing the right thing. Even though I'm committed to that lifestyle, it's still difficult on days for me. So just a lot in that first thing, first couple lines, really. And he goes on to really address more in depthly why it's even more important, or why this thinking is wrong, why this thinking of, as long as my external actions are good, or align with what they're supposed to align with, why does it matter what I think and feel? Why does it matter what desires I have inside? Those are my business only. So and then Fox says, but we know now that any outward act is but a sequel to a thought, and that the type of thought which we allow to become habituated will sooner or later find expression on the plane of action. That is quite the statement. That is quite the truth. So he's saying, just because the act is right, if you continue to entertain negative, sinful, selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed thinking, eventually it will find expression on the plane of action. Eventually, in this physical world, you're going to take the action, whether you like it or not, whether you realize it or not, whether you want to really or not, right? Some of us have these deep down secrets, these skeletons in our closet, right? These dark desires, whatever you want to call them. And we'll hold on to them. We'll enjoy them. We'll consistently think about them, right? The thought which we allow to become habituated. So the things we allow to continuously cross our mind and we entertain and continue to watch and think about and contemplate, right? Those will eventually have to come out into the world. Behind every action is a thought, right? So whatever's going on in here is going to come out in here. Every action has a thought, right? Yeah, the act is but a sequel to a thought. You don't ever just act without some precursors to it, right? People are like, well, I just respond. There's still a fear response. I would stand on the fact, and I truly believe this, and this has been my experience, that every behavior I have, even if it is a natural, instinctive reaction, it comes from some deep embedded thought. Now, I might not even realize that thought is occurring. I might not even know that it is something I need to take a look at. I might not even know where it came from, but there is a thought that precedes every single action. And sometimes it's so fast you don't see it. Sometimes it's so fast you don't even consider the fact that there's something there to change. But there is a space between event occurring out there and our action. Every act is a sequel to a thought. So there is no action without a thought behind it. It might happen so fast that you don't notice it, because it has been a long-standing and ingrained behavior, but it is there. I promise you, it is there. If you give yourself enough time, enough energy, enough focus, and enough diligence, you can see it, and you can change it, right? And just because we are not acting on it currently doesn't mean that we won't ever act on it, right? People contemplate arguments for days, weeks, months, years, decades before it actually happens, right? People will continuously run it through their mind. That's what's called a resentment. They will continuously ponder and they will continuously contemplate the wrong that's happened, how they want to treat them, what they want to talk about, right? They will ruminate on these things and just continue to entertain these thoughts. And they think if they're not taking the action, then they're fine. But the problem is when you entertain those types of thinking, even at some point, most likely you're setting yourself up for that action to happen, regardless of what it is. But even if that action isn't happening currently, you are still building up this energy. Fox states it will find expression in the plane of action, right? Like it will come out, whether it is the direct action you're thinking about, or whether it's as some people say, as it comes out sideways. If you're just thinking about your anger towards your boss and you come home, you have bred this anger within you, and guess what? You're yelling at everybody else. Or vice versa, if you're miserable at home because of one reason or another, and you're constantly thinking about how you're unappreciated or people don't care about you, or, they're just, you feel like you're being taken advantage and you got that whole self-pity thing going on, and you go to work, guess what? You're going to act the same way to the people that don't deserve that, right? Well, no one ever deserves to be treated from that place, treated any type of way from that place, right? No condemnation, no anger, no retribution, no passive aggressiveness, right? Like none of that is ever appropriate. But you're going to take the thoughts from over here that were started over here about these things, and then they're going to come out sideways towards somebody else. So those thoughts are getting expressed on the plane of action, and they're not getting expressed in a healthy way towards the proper people in a way that's constructive to build. Those thoughts are just poisoning your soul and your mind. Now, when I read something like this, I think of a author that I've read a couple of his books, and I've listened to a ton of his videos on YouTube and his lectures. His name was Wayne Dyer. He was a very big spiritual guru type of individual, and I don't remember the years. I think it was the 80s and the 90s and even into the early 2000s. But one thing that always stuck out to me was this video where he asked the audience, he said, why does orange juice come from an orange? When you squeeze an orange juice, why does orange juice come from an orange? Why is it not apple juice? Why is it not grape juice? It's because it's what's inside of it. If you're harboring thoughts of anger and resentment and condemnation and revenge and punishment, then when you get squeezed, when you get shaken, when you get even more stressed, guess what? That's what's going to come out. And it might not, and it's usually not towards the person or individual that it was originally created around. And that's the part that really messes with people's lives. And that's the part where people don't understand why someone's doing something, right? Like there is something else that is driving us. And if you find yourself always being angry, if you find yourself always getting in conflict, right? You have to look within you. You have to look and to see what is inside, because that is what is coming out. So that's what's in here. You've got to take a look at what's going on up here to see why that's what's coming out of you. To the people that you love, to the people that you care about, to those who you respect and those who respect and love you, right? You have to actually take the initiative to say, if this is how I'm finding myself all of the time to other people, then it's something's within me and I am just off all the time. I always think it's funny when people say, I go from 0 to 100 real quick. No, you don't. You are walking around at an 8 or a 9 all the time because of the mental anguish you're in. And then someone does one thing and you're just teed off and ready to go. That's how this actually works. And it's a beautiful thing when you know someone like that, and then they suddenly are able to drop it down to a 7, maybe even a 6. And they didn't realize how wound up they were the whole time. And what's even better is they think they've found peace and serenity, and I'm sure they've gotten a taste of it, but they have so much further to go and so much peace of mind and joy and freedom to be able to grab onto. But they have to be willing to take a look within themselves and what their thoughts are about to be able to get to that point. They've been feeding these types of thoughts for so long, and they've been coming out in all the wrong ways to all the wrong people for such an extended period of time that they don't even know what's real and what's not real anymore. They don't even know how to behave in a healthy, patient way, maybe, whatever it might be. So just remember, what comes out of you most of the time is what's within you. And that's what you're responsible for. So, he goes next into this point of our choice. So, where our actual choice resides is partially in the action, but he tells us where the actual choice is. Our choice in conduct really lies in our choice of the kind of thought that we permit to occupy the stage of our mind. So, that's the actual choice you have. If you want, I talk about this often, if you forcibly change a behavior, let's say you don't want the consequences of your probation, a judge, your family members. So you quit a behavior, whether that's substance use, whether that's drinking, whether that's anger, pornography, gambling, whatever it might be, your efforts around work, right? If you change them forcibly because of external motivating factors, guess what? It's not going to stick. It's not going to stick until you address the thinking that's behind it. It's not going to stick until you actually put in the spiritual work, the mental work, the emotional work to actually understand what that behavior was doing for you and address it and change it. That's the only way any of this change happens. That's the only way anything like this occurs in a healthy way, right? And a change can be affected permanently, right? So a change in thinking will facilitate a permanent change in behavior. But a change in behavior without a change in thinking will only ever be temporary. You'll just be waiting to go back to it no matter what. It's never going to stick. So what he's pointing out here is, from my experience, very, very true. The real choice we have is what we decide, what kind of thought that what kind of thought that we permit to occupy the stage of our mind. That's how he phrased it. And I think that phrasing is very, very important. He picked a word to use there called stage. Or he picked the word stage to use there. And contextually, I think it's very important. And this might go to a little bit of my belief. That might not be so common, but I think the truth of the matter is our minds and our thoughts are not us. We choose the thoughts we focus on. We choose the ones we want to continue to grow. We choose the ones we want to contemplate and ruminate on. We make an active choice all the time as to what we're watching run through here, right? We can have two conflicting thoughts, a yes or no. When someone asks you a question, you can either say yes or no, and you know both of them. You're the one that chooses what you would like to say. So therefore, you are the one that chooses what you're paying attention to in your mind. You are the one that chooses what you are continuing to play through, the perspectives you take, the situations and the emotions you want to continue to take into yourself and relive. You get a choice in this. So this is the mind is a stage that we're watching, and we have to be very careful as to what we are watching there and what we are putting on that stage. Are we putting on acting out thoughts of resentment? Are we putting on acting out thoughts of lust? Are we putting on acting out thoughts of selfishness and self-centeredness or vanity or gluttony, right? Like, or what are we putting on that stage that we are actively watching and participating in? That's where that's where our choice is. That's where the strength and the power is that's where we get to choose. We get to choose to change the show in our minds. We get to change the show and then therefore change the actions. That's what we're responsible for. And that's the choice we have. And that's where permanent effective change can only ever come into play. Because if you're still thinking resentful thoughts, trying to be kind, guess what? It's going to be disingenuous, first and foremost. And you're not going to be able to make it seem real. You will always have that undertone of resentment with you. Now, there's something to be said to just start taking the right actions, right? Start doing the right things. But what that will do is it will show you the thinking that's behind the wrong actions. It will show you the thinking in your own mind and in your own heart as to why you don't want to take the right actions. And there is where you need to start making choices as to what you want to think about and how you want to think about it. We dismiss it as this is how I always am. That's just a ridiculous way to think. No one thinks like that, right? I don't want to be taken advantage of. They're doing this to me. I'm a victim, blah, blah, blah. Anything. You go on for days with that. But that's where you get to make the choice. Do I want to be loving? Do I want to be kind? Do I want to be forgiving? Do I want to let this person go? Do I just want to be a joyful person? Do I want to do the right things? Right? You've got to incorporate those thoughts. You've got to put those characters in your mind. You've got to put those people on the stage that you're constantly ruminating about and you're thinking about and you're contemplating, right? James Allen talks about contemplating the aspects of God, and what a beautiful thing that is, because it fills your head with it. Your actions will inherently reflect what you are thinking about. I can't stress this enough. That's why when sometimes someone will do something nice for you and you're like, I appreciate it, but I know they're only doing this nice thing for me because they have to. You can sense just from the way they conduct themselves and carry themselves that it's not genuine. All in due time, hopefully they'll get there, but it's just that fake smile, that fake pleasantry, all of that stuff. It's very obvious. So I also want to put into this that we are responsible for everything we consume. And I don't just mean the food that we put in our bodies, but that is also very important. But also we're responsible for the conversations we're having. We're responsible for the news we're taking in. We're responsible for the media we're watching, movies, social media, whatever it is. We're responsible for the friend group we hang around and the places we go to. All of that we are constantly consuming. We are constantly letting those things into our mind and onto the stage of our life. You're responsible for taking some accountability for what you've surrounded yourself with, for what you are actually engaging with. You are responsible for that. That will help you clarify and purify, maybe is a good way to say it. Purify, that some people get a little bit weird about that word, but to try to purify your mind into to this Christ-like conduct, this righteous behavior, this righteous character, where we all want to get to one day. Like that's the ultimate goal, at least for myself. That's where I want to be, right? So I've got to be careful what I put into me. I've got to be careful what I accept as truth. I got to be careful what I'm actually surrounding myself with. Because this quote is beautiful. A wrong thought is just as destructive A wrong thought is just as destructive an act as a wrong deed. If it's up here, it's just as bad, because that is defining my character. That is defining my inner life. That is disaligning. That is pointing me in the wrong direction, misaligning me from God's will in my life. That is where the sin is, right? The action is the result of my sin and my sinful thinking and my sinful desires, my sinful wishes, right? Which are really just selfish, self-centered, self-aggrandizing, self-fulfilling, all this self-absorbed stuff. That is where the sin is. And then I go this way, and then the actions follow, right? So it's up here first. It always has been up there first. And that's why these thoughts are so important. That's why this part of the Sermon on the Mount is just so crucial. People get lost because he says lust, and that just has so many associations, and people get so up in arms about just talking about sexuality and sex and lust and all of that stuff already, that some of the message, I believe, gets lost. We're talking about having the wrong, having unhealthy thinking, selfish, self-centered, sinful thinking is just as bad as committing the sin, because it separates you from God. It separates you from the God of your understanding and your source, your creator, your whatever it is for you, your universal energy, Mother Nature, right? It separates you from that connection, that light of the Spirit, as some might call it. That separation is in your mind. And then the actions just follow. That is where it begins. All right. So I'm going to read a chunk out of this. It's the last paragraph of this chapter. The paragraph starts with the logical, but I'm starting with the second sentence. So it means that if you entertain covetous thoughts for your neighbor's money, you are a thief at heart, even though you may not yet have put your hand in the till. And if you continue to entertain such thoughts, it is only a question of time before you will rob him. If you willingly nourish hatred, you are a murderer at heart, even though your hands are not moved to kill. The adulterer at heart is corrupting his soul, even though his impure thought is never expressed on the physical plane. When we hold these things in our hearts, when we hold these things in our minds, we have the heart of a thief. We have the heart of a murderer. We have the heart of an adulterer. Just because we haven't done it out here, we know it. That's where the shame comes in. It's not necessarily just with the action. It's how we feel and how we think. We know that isn't right. And we become more and more separated from this God of our understanding, this higher power, right? Because I don't have that goodness in my heart. I have selfishness in my heart. I have covetousness in my heart, lust in my heart, vanity in my heart. I have pride in my heart instead of God. And when that's happening, I have no connection with him anymore. That's why what we think about and the things we entertain and what we're actually doing are just such a important thing to realize. Because your hands have not done it, you might not be a murderer by law, but if you are fantasizing about violence to somebody, you have the heart of a murderer. You have done everything but the actual act. Now, there's some redemption, maybe is the word, or some goodness in not taking the actual physical action. But you, yourself, me, myself, I need to take a look at why I want to do that. Do I feel so wronged? Do I feel like this person is trying to harm me? Do I feel like this is somebody that I just need to be in power and control over? That's usually what violence is about. I want control over the situation. I want power over them. I want them to feel intimidated. I want them to feel a certain way. So I feel weak inside. So I feel weak, and I feel this thing that I'm fantasizing about gives me what I feel weak around. And guess what? I have the heart of a murderer then. I have the heart of a thief and an adulterer. What a painful understanding and perspective. But it is a truth. To hold it in your heart is just as bad for you and your connection with God as actually taking the action. Because you are not abiding, abiding is not the right word. You are not placing yourself in service to the God of your understanding. You are still serving yourself. You are not serving goodness. You're serving selfishness. That's why this concept and idea is just so important. The action's the final piece of this whole thing. I was selfish long before the action. I'd contemplated it long before the action. I had the heart for it long before the thoughts. And that's where we get lost. Now, the second to last sentence is lust, jealousy, vengeance, mentally entertained, carry the soul's consent. And this soul consent is the malice or the ill will of sin. Whether the corresponding outer acts be yet materialized or not. So you holding this within you means you are approving of this. That means you desire this. It means you want this thing. Again, it can be a multitude of actions and behaviors, right? All selfish, self-serving, all sinful by a Christian eye. You are consenting to them. You are approving of them. And when you do that, you are running from a Christ-like character and a Christ-like conduct, which is what we are striving for when we're trying to walk this spiritual journey, when we're going down this narrow path, right? This is what that narrowing path really means. We start seeing more and more our selfishness and self-centeredness, and then less and less bad behavior becomes acceptable. You do the loving thing, the kind thing, the forgiving thing, the Christ-like conduct, the righteous behavior. That is what you do. Anything outside of it, regardless of its impact on you, is not right, and you are not aligned with it. That is what we are aiming for. That is the journey we're taking. But when you hold these things in your heart, you're giving your soul to them. You're putting them ahead of this God that you're in service to, this power, this energy, this source that you're in service to, this God. You're saying, I'll put that aside. I want to entertain this. Give me this, not you, God. You're pushing him away. Your desire to still sin is what separates you. Just because you're following the law, by human standards, you may be recognized as a good person, but this entire chapter is talking about there is more work to do. It is not good enough to abide by the laws of man only. You have to change your thinking and change your heart. He says that in the last piece here. He references this. This is another Bible verse, actually. He closes with, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are all the issues of life. Proverbs, I looked it up, Proverbs 4:23. This is where it originates. Our selfishness, our self-centeredness, our self-absorbedness, putting us first, serving ourselves only. And then we entertain these thoughts to be of service to ourselves. And then these thoughts manifest in actions outside of us, whether the action outright or sideways, whether it's directed towards the right person or other people, right? We harbor these feelings that we believe will serve us and gratify us in some way because we have the wrong thing held in our heart. So this keep the heart with all diligence is so important to see and to recognize. Keep your heart. Keep love in your heart. And then the rest will eventually fall into place. Loving heart is a loving thought, and a loving thought is a loving act. That's how it's all connected. So to stop the behavior is good, but changing your thinking and changing your desires and changing your heart, that's where we really become aligned with goodness and love. So, all right, well, that's it. That's the last installment of this chapter. Again, this was As a Man Thinketh and Emmet Fox's Sermon on the Mount. Now, for the next book, I've got a couple selections still up in the air. I have not made an official determination. There's a lot of good stuff that I got on my mind. I have a hard time sometimes figuring out the next direction I want to go with. So it'll be a surprise to both of us next week. But thank you all for your support again. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for all the feedback I've been getting on the videos as well. It's been great. So thank you so much. And until next time, thanks.